Good evening. Good evening. Good to be with everybody this evening. 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern. It's going to read some John Bunyan this evening. Read some John Bunyan, Pilgrim's Progress. Hang on, we're telling more followers to join your video. Telling your followers that you started a live video. Well, thank you so much, Instagram. Good evening. Good evening. I want to do a little reading tonight from Pilgrim's Progress. About to actually, hopefully, can get the first 30 pages done. Pilgrim's Progress. It's old. This is an old copy. Nice old book. And I don't know if any of you have read Pilgrim's Progress before, but it's a good one. So I'm actually good. Sylvia Crouch, good to have you on. Actually, I'm going to do one more recording. I'll hop on the page. And hopefully nobody will be mad that I read John Bunyan to them. There it is, 365. There we go. It's going to do a little John Bunyan, Pilgrim's Progress. Going to start this evening. Hopefully first 40 pages, 30 or 40. All right. Got the 365 started as well. There it is. Good evening. Good evening. All right. Feel like I'm doing some fireside chats or something. Wanted to give you a different view. Don't remember much. Oh, okay. 60. That can't be since you're only 50. Mama, can't be. You're only 50. How could that be 60 years ago when you're in high school? I don't get it. All right, so John Bunyan wrote this from jail, I do believe. So well, I don't know how you could have read this in high school 60 years ago since you're only 50. All right, Pilgrim's Progress. This is actually the first page of the book. He does give a thing which is called the author's apology for his book. I'm going to skip that. And I'm going to of John Bunyan. Maybe I should read it. Okay, I will. Don't twist my arm or my leg. All right, a memoir of John Bunyan. John Bunyan, the son of a traveling brazier or tinker, was born at Elstow near Bedford in 1628. Good evening, Kelly. Good to have you on. Good evening. At a period when wickedness prevailed through the land, this is in England, in 1628, says his education was such as poor people could in those days give to their children. He was sent to school and taught to read and write, but he was an idle boy, and for cursing, swearing, lying, and blaspheming had a few equals of his own age. In his earlier days, terror seemed to be the only restraining influence of which he felt the power. In the daytime, he often had gloomy forebodings of the wrath to come, and at night he was scared with dreams. His imagination conceived apparitions of evil spirits seeking to drag him away after them, or he would fancy that the last day was come with all its terrible realities. Such were his youthful fears. As he grew older, he became much hardened, and the remarkable providential interpositions of which he was the subject neither startled nor melted him. Twice he narrowly escaped drowning, and during the Civil War was drawn as a soldier to go to the siege at Leicester. That would be the Civil War in England, not the Civil War in the States in the 1800s. This would be the Civil War in England in the 1600s. A comrade who had sought and obtained leave to go in his room when standing sentry was shot through the head and died. His married had some slight influence on his future life. The young woman was very poor, and her only portion consisted of 2 volumes which her father, a godly man, had given to her: The Plain Man's Pathway to Heaven and The Practice of Piety. Amen. Miss Bunyan would often read these books with her husband and would relate what a holy life her father led. As a consequence, an earnest desire for reformation seized upon him, but it was only external. His heart was unchanged, and he continued in a sinful course of life. Hearing, however, a sermon on the sin of Sabbath breaking, it much affected him. As was his custom, he was engaged in the afternoon at a pastime when thoughts of a coming judgment crowned in upon his awakened mind. He became terrified and imagined he heard a voice from heaven saying, "Wilt thou leave thy sins and go to heaven, or have thy sins and go to hell?" The conviction that he had been a grievous transgressor flashed across his mind, but he concluded that it was too late for him to look for pardon or for heaven, and he returned desperately to his sports again. After some time had passed, he fell into the company of a poor Christian man whose pious conversation about religion and the scriptures so touched Bunyan's heart that he began to read the Bible. There were many things in that book which alarmed him, and he commenced an outward reformation in word and life, but entirely in his own strength and ignorant of the love and grace of Christ Jesus. The conversation of 3 pious women sitting at a door in the streets of Bedford one day attracted his notice. He drew near, and as they spoke of the things of God, of his work in their hearts, and of the peace of reconciliation, he saw there was something in real religion which he had not yet known or felt. Their words were never forgotten, and from that time he forsook the company of the profane and sought the society of those who had at least a reputation for piety. Bunyan had now set out fairly on his way from the city of destruction, but he fell into many dangers and errors, and there is scarcely a fear which can assail an inquiring spirit which did not at some period disturb his mind. For a long time, he was like his own man in the cage and at interpreter's house, shut out from the promises and looking forward to certain judgment. His conflict, too, with the evil one was such as to remind us of the struggle between Christian and Apollyon. There came now, however, as he beautifully expresses it in his Pilgrim, a hand with some of the leaves of the tree of life, which Christian took and applied to some of the wounds he had received in the battle and was healed immediately. He was laid by faith to the cross of Christ and became more than conqueror through him that loved him. Shortly after this time, he made an open profession of religion and then began to make known to others the Savior whom he had found. The now enlightened Christian man soon had to suffer much on account of his religion. Between the years of 1655 and 1660, he often preached, 1655, and 1660, he often preached in the neighborhood of Bedford. In the latter year, he was arrested and put into the Bedford County Gaol, where for 12 years, with but one brief interval of a few weeks, he was kept a prisoner. It is frequently asserted that Bunyan wrote the Pilgrim's Progress during this imprisonment, but Dr. Brown has shown conclusively that it was during a later and briefer imprisonment in the old town jail of Bedford Bridge in the year of 1676. that the first part of the immortal masterpiece was written. It was first published in the early months of the year of 1678. The second part was not published until 1685. This book, which is equally a favorite in the nursery and in the study, has received the commendation of men of the highest order of intellect. It has been translated into numerous languages, some of which are unknown to Europe in the days in which Bunyan lived. Missionaries have carried with them this book to almost every part of the earth, and now the Pilgrim tells his tale to the Chinese in the east, to the Negroes in the west, to the Greenlanders in the north, and the islanders of the Pacific in the south. Bunyan was the author of another allegory, The Holy War, published in 1682, which is second only in merit to The Pilgrim's Progress. In his own inimitable way, he has also told the story of his life and religious experience in Grace Abounding, a classic worthy to stand by Augustine's Confessions and Luther's Table Talk. Besides these great works, he wrote many valuable treatises, some of which are still read with pleasure and profit. The last paragraph of this section says, in prison, Bunyan learned the art of making long tag thread laces and thus contribute to the support of his family. After his release, he lived a useful life as minister of Bunyan Meeting in Bedford and as a preacher and writer. He died August 12th, 1688. And Mr. Strudwick's a grocer at the sign of the quote-unquote star on Snow Hill and was buried in Bun Hill Fields. All right, this portion is called the author's apology for his book. It says, when at the first I took my pen in hand, thus for to write, I did not understand that I at all should make a little book in such a mode. Nay, I had undertook to make another, which, when almost done, before I was aware, I this begun. And thus it was. I, writing of the way and race of saints, in this our gospel day, fell suddenly into an allegory about their journey and the way to glory. In more than 20 things which I set down, this done, I 20 more had in my crown. And they again began to multiply, like sparks that from the coals of fire do fly. Nay, then thought I, if that you breed so fast, I'll put you by yourselves, lest you at last should prove ad infinitum, and eat out the book that I already am about. Well, so I did, but yet I did not think to show all the world my pen and ink in such a mode. I only thought to make I knew not what, nor did I undertake thereby to please my neighbor. No, not I. I did it mine own self to gratify. I remember this author's apology for his book. It is a little weighty. It is a little heavy. It is a little weighty. What I'm going to do, I will skip the author's apology, and I will begin straight with chapter 1, the beginning of The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan, which was finished in 1685. Pilgrim's Progress. In the similitude of a dream, as I walked through the wilderness of this world, I lighted on a certain place where was a den, and laid me down in that place to sleep. And as I slept, I dreamed a dream. I dreamed, and behold, I saw a man clothed with rags, standing in a certain place, with his face from his own house, a book in his hand, and a great burden upon his back. I looked and saw him open the book and read therein. And as he read, he wept and trembled, and not being able longer to contain, he brake out with a lamentable cry, saying, what shall I do? In this plight, therefore, he went home, and restrained himself as long as he could, that his wife and children should not perceive his distress, but he could not be silent long, because that his trouble increased. Wherefore at length he brake his mind to his wife and children, and thus began to talk to them. Oh, my dear wife, said he, and you, the children of my bowels, I, your dear friend, am in myself undone by reason of a burden that lieth hard upon me. Moreover, I am for certain informed that this our city will be burned with fire from heaven, in which fearful overthrow, both myself with thee, my wife, and you, my sweet babes, shall miserably come to ruin, except the which yet I see not, some way of escape can be found, whereby we may be delivered. At this, his relations were sore amazed, not for that they believed that what he had said to them was true, but because they thought that some frenzy, distemper had got into his head. Therefore, it drawing towards night, and they, hoping that sleep might settle his brains, with all haste they got him to bed. But the night was as troublesome to him as the day, wherefore instead of sleeping, he spent it in sighs and tears. So when the morning was come, they would not know how he did. He told them worse and worse. He also set to talking to them again, but they began to be hardened. They also thought to drive away his distemper by harsh and surly carriages to him. Sometimes they would deride, sometimes they would chide, sometimes they would quite neglect him. Wherefore he began to retire himself to his chamber, to pray for and pity them, and also to condole his own misery. He would also walk solitarily in the fields, sometimes reading, sometimes praying, and thus for some days he spent his time. Now, I saw upon a time when he was walking in the fields that he was, as he wont, reading in his book, and greatly distressed in his mind. And as he read, he burst out as he had done before, crying, What shall I do to be saved? I saw also that he looked this way and that way as if he would run. Yet he stood still because, as I perceived, he could not tell which way to go. I looked then and saw a man named Evangelist coming to him, and asked, Wherefore dost thou cry? He answered, Sir, I perceive by the book in my hand that I am condemned to die, and after that to come to judgment. And I find that I'm not willing to do the first, nor able to do the second. Then said Evangelist, Why not willing to die, since this life is attended with so many evils? The man answered, Because I fear that this burden that is upon my back will sink me lower than the grave, and I shall fall into Tophet. And, sir, if I be not fit to go to prison, I am not fit to go to judgment, and from then to execution. And the thoughts of these things make me cry. Then said Evangelist, If this be thy condition, why standest thou still? He answered, Because I know not whither to go. Then he gave him a parchment roll, and there was written within, Fly from the wrath to come. The man therefore read it, and looking upon Evangelist carefully said, Whither must I fly? Then said Evangelist, pointing with his finger over a very wide field, Do you see yonder wicket gate? The man said, No. Then said the other, Do you see yonder shining light? He said, I think I do. Then said Evangelist, Keep that light in your eye, and go up directly thereto, so shalt thou see the gate, at which when thou knockest, it shall be told thee what thou shalt do. So I saw in my dream that the man began to run. Now he had not run far from his own door, but his wife and children, perceiving it, began to cry after him to return. But the man put his fingers in his ears and ran on crying, Life, life, eternal life. So he looked not behind him, but fled towards the middle of the plain. The neighbors also came out to see him run. And as he ran, some mocked, others threatened, and some cried after him to return. And among those that did so, there were two that were resolved to fetch him back by force. The name of the one was Obstinate, and the name of the other Pliable. Now by this time, the man was got a good distance from them, but however, they were resolved to pursue him, which they did, and in a little time they overtook him. Then said the man, Neighbors, wherefore are you come? They said, to persuade you to go back with us. But he said, that can by no means be. You dwell, said he, in the city of destruction, the place also where I was born. I see it to be so, and dying there, sooner or later you will sink lower than the grave, into a place that burns with fire and brimstone. Be content, good neighbors, and go along with me. What? Said Obstinate. And leave our friends and our comforts behind us? Yes, said Christian, for that was his name, because that all which you shall forsake is not worthy to be compared with a little that I'm seeking to enjoy. And if you will go along with me and hold it, you shall fare as I myself, for there where I go is enough and to spare. Come away and prove my words. Hey Tammy, how you doing? Good to have you on. Sylvia, good to have you on. Good to have you on, Mom. What up, Myro? Reading some Pilgrim's Progress. Good to see you, Jason. It says, what are the things you seek? Kind of like on page 3 or 4 of Pilgrim's Progress, just getting started. What are the things you seek since you leave all the world to find them? I seek an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, and that fadeth not away. And it is laid up in heaven and safe there to be bestowed at the time appointed on them that diligently seek it. Read it so, if you will, in my book. Tush, said Obstinate, away with your book. Will you go back with us or no? Christian, not I, said the other, because I have laid my hand to the plow. Come then, neighbor Pliable, let us turn again and go home without him. There is a company of these crazy-headed coxcombs that when they take a fancy by the end are wiser in their own eyes than 7 men that can render a reason. Then said Pliable, don't revile. If what the good Christian says is true, the things he looks after are better than ours. My heart inclines to go with my neighbor. What? More fool still. Be ruled by me and go back. Who knows whither such a brain-sick fellow will lead you? Go back, and be wise. Christian, come with thy neighbor, Pliable. There are such things to be had which I spoke of, and many more glories besides. If you believe not me, read here in this book. And for the truth of what is expressed therein, behold, all is confirmed by the blood of him that made it. Pliable, well, neighbor Obstinate, saith Pliable, I begin to come to a point. I intend to go along with this good man, and to cast in my lot with him. But my good companion, do you know the way to this desired place? Christian, I am directed by a man whose name is Evangelist to speed me to a little gate that is before us, where we shall receive instruction about the way. Pilgrim, come then, good neighbor, let us be going. Then they went both together. Obstinate, and I will go back to my place, said Obstinate. I will be no companion of such misled, fantastical fellows. Now I saw in my dream that when Obstinate was gone back, Christian and Pliable went talking over the plain, and thus they began their discourse. Christian, come, neighbor Pliable, how do you do? I am glad you are persuaded to go along with me. Had even Obstinate himself been felt what I have felt of the powers and terrors of what is yet unseen, he would not thus lightly have given us the back. Pilgrim, come. I'm sorry, Pliable. Come, neighbor Christian. Since there are none but us two here, tell me now further what the things are, and how to be enjoyed whether we are going. Christian, I can better conceive them with my mind than speak of them with my tongue, but yet, since you are desirous to know, I will read of them in my book. Pliable, and do you think the words of your book are certainly true? Christian, yes, verily, for it was made by him that cannot lie. Pliable, well said. What things are they? Christian, there is an endless kingdom to be inhabited, and everlasting life to be given us. that we may inhabit that kingdom forever. Pliable, well said. And what else? Christian, there are crowns of glory to be given us and garments that will make us shine like the sun in the firmament of heaven. Pliable, this is excellent. And what else? Christian, there shall be no more crying, no sorrow, for he that is owner of the place will wipe all tears from our eyes. Pliable, and what company shall we have there? Christian, there we shall be with seraphims and cherubims, creatures that will dazzle your eyes to look on them. There also you shall meet with thousands and 10,000s that have gone before us to that place. None of them are hurtful, but loving and holy. Everyone walking in the sight of God and standing in his presence with acceptance forever. In a word, there we shall see the elders with their golden crowns. There we shall see the holy virgins with their golden harps. There we shall see men that by the world were cut in pieces, burnt in flames, eaten of the beast, drowned in the seas, for the love they bear to the Lord of the place, all well, and clothed with immortality as with a garment. Pliable. The hearing of this is enough to ravish one's heart. But are these things to be enjoyed? How shall we get to be sharers hereof? Christian. The Lord, the governor of the country, hath recorded that in this book, the substance of which is, if we be truly willing to have it, he will bestow it upon us freely. Pliable. Well, my good companion, glad am I to hear of these things. Come on, let us mend our pace. Is that book written backwards? No, I don't think so. And Victoria, happy birthday to you. I believe it's your birthday today. Happy birthday. Good to have you on. Let us mend our pace. Christian, I cannot go so fast as I would by reason of this burden that is on my back. Now I saw in my dream that just as they had ended this talk, they drew nigh to a very miry slough that was in the midst of the plain, and they being heedless, did both fall suddenly into the bog. The name of the slough was Despond. Here, therefore, they wallowed for a time, being grievously bedaubed with dirt. And Christian, because of the burden that was on his back, began to sink in the mire. Pliable. Then said Pliable, neighbor Christian, where are you now? Christian, truly, said Christian, I do not know. Pliable. At this, Pliable began to be offended, and angrily said to his fellow, is this the happiness you have told me all this while of? If we have such ill speed at our first setting out, what may we expect twixt this and our journey's end? May I get out again with my life? You shall possess the brave country alone for me. And with that, he gave a desperate struggle or two and got out of the mire on that side of the slough, which was next to his own house. So away he went, and Christian saw him no more. Pliable rolled out. Yep, times got hard, and he dipset it on. Wherefore Christian was left to tumble in the slough of despond alone, but still he endeavored to struggle to that side of the slough that was further from his own house and next to the wicket gate, the which he did, but could not get out because of the burden that was upon his back. But I beheld in my dream that a man came to him whose name was Help, and asked him what he did there. Christian, sir, said Christian, I was bid to go this way by a man called Evangelist, who directed me also to yonder gate, that I might escape the wrath to come. And as I was going thither, I fell in here. Help. But why did you look for the steps? But why did you not look for the steps? Christian, fear followed me so hard that I fled the next way and fell in. Help. Then said he, give me thy hand. So he gave him his hand, and he drew him out, and set him upon sound ground, and bid him go on his way. Then I stepped to him that plucked him out and said, Sir, wherefore, since over this place is the way from the city of destruction to yonder gate, is it that this plat is not mended, that poor travelers might go thither more secure, with more security? And he said unto me, This miry slough is such a place as cannot be mended. It is the descent whither the scum and filth that attends conviction for sin doth continually run. And therefore it was called the slough of despond. For still as the sinner is awakened about his lost condition, there arise in his soul many fears and doubts and discouraging apprehensions, which all of them get together and settle in this place. And this is the reason of the badness of this ground. It is not the pleasure of the king that this place should remain so bad. His laborers also have, by the directions of his majesty's surveyors, been for above these 1600 years employed about this patch of ground, if perhaps it might have been mended. Yea, and to my knowledge, said he, here hath been swallowed up at least 20,000 cartloads, yea, millions of wholesome instructions that have at all seasons been brought from all places of the king's dominions. And they that can tell say they are the best materials to make good ground of the place. If so be it might have been mended, but it is the slough of despond still. And so will be when they have done what they can. True, there are, by the directions of the lawgiver, certain good and substantial steps placed even through the very midst of the slough, but at such time as this place doth much spew out its filth, as it doth against change of weather, these steps are hardly seen. Or if they be, men through the dizziness of their heads step besides, and then they are bemired to purpose, notwithstanding the steps be there. But the ground is good when they are once got in at the gate. Now I saw in my dream that by this time Pliable was got home to his house. So his neighbors came to visit him. And some of them called him wise man for coming back. And some called him fool for hazarding himself with Christian. Others again did mock at his cowardliness, saying, Surely, since you began to venture, I would not have been so base to have given out for a few difficulties. So Pliable sat sneaking among them. But at last he got more confidence, and then they all turned their tables and began to deride poor Christian behind his back, and thus much concerning Pliable. So yeah, Victoria, it's like a vision. The author, it's an allegory, and he's writing it as though he fell asleep and had a dream, and he's talking about his dream. So it's pretty interesting. Now, as Christian was walking solitarily by himself, he espied one afar off, come crossing over the field to meet him, and their hap was to meet just as they were crossing the way of each other. The gentleman's name was Mr. Worldly Wiseman. He dwelt in the town of Carnal Policy, a very great town, and also hard by from whence Christian came. This man then, meeting with Christian and having some inkling of him, for Christian setting forth from the city of destruction, was much noise abroad, not only in the town where he dwelt, but also it began to be the town talk in some other places. Mr. Worldly Wiseman, therefore, having some guess of him by beholding his laborious going, by observing his sighs and groans and the like, began thus to enter into some talk with Christian. So Worldly Wiseman, where is my writing utensil? Seems like I may have left it. Worldly Wiseman, how now, good fellow, whither away after this burdened manner? Christian, a burdened manner indeed, as ever I think poor creature had. And whereas you ask me whither away, I tell you, sir, I am going to yonder wicket gate. Wicket is W-I-C-K-E-T dash gate, wicket gate before me. For there, as I am informed, I shall be put into a way to be rid of my heavy burden. Worldly Wiseman, hast thou a wife and children? Christian, yes, but I am so laden with this burden that I cannot take that pleasure in them as formerly. Methinks I am as if I had none. Worldly Wiseman, wilt thou hearken to me if I give thee counsel? Christian, if it be good, I will, for I stand in need of good counsel. Worldly Wiseman, I would advise thee then, that thou with all speed get thyself rid of thy burden, for thou wilt never be settled in thy mind till then, nor canst thou enjoy the benefits of the blessings which God hath bestowed upon thee till then. Christian, that is that which I seek for, even to be rid of this heavy burden, but get it off myself I cannot, nor is there any man in our country that can take it off my shoulders. Therefore I am going this way, as I told you, that I may be rid of my burden. Worldly Wiseman, who bid thee go this way to be rid of thy burden? A man that appeared to me to be a very great and honorable person, his name, as I remember, is Evangelist. Worldly Wiseman, I beshrew him for his counsel. There is not a more dangerous and troublesome way in the world than is that unto which he hath directed thee, and that thou shalt find, if thou wilt be ruled by his counsel. Thou hast met with something, as I perceive already, for I see the dirt of sloth of despond is upon thee. But that sloth is the beginning of the sorrows that do attend those that go on in that way. Hear me, I am older than thou. Thou art like to meet with, in the way which thou goest, wearisomeness, painfulness, hunger, perils, nakedness, sword, lions, dragons, darkness, and in a word, death, and whatnot. These things are certainly true, having been confirmed by many testimonies, and should a man so carelessly cast away himself by giving heed to a stranger. Why, sir, this burden upon my back is more terrible to me than all these things which you have mentioned. Nay, methinks I care not what I meet with in the way, if so I can also meet with deliverance from my burden. Worldly Wiseman, how camest thou by thy burden at first? Christian, by reading the book in my hand. Worldly Wiseman, I thought so. And it has happened unto thee as to other weak men, who, meddling with things too high for them, do suddenly fall into thy distractions, which distractions do not only unman men, as thine I perceive hath done thee, but they run them upon desperate ventures to obtain they know not what. Christian, I know what I would obtain. It is ease from my heavy burden. Worldly Wiseman, but why wilt thou seek for ease this way, seeing so many dangers attend it? Especially since, hadst thou but patience to hear me, I could direct thee to the obtaining of what thou desirest, without the dangers that thou in this way wilt run thyself into. Yea, and the remedy is at hand. Besides, I will add that instead of those dangers, thou shalt meet with much safety, friendship, and content. Christian, sir, I pray open this secret to me. Worldly Wiseman, why, in yonder village, the village is named Morality. There dwells a gentleman whose name is Legality, a very judicious man and a man of very good name, that has skill to help men off with such burdens as thine are from their shoulders. Yea, to my knowledge, he hath done a great deal of good this way. And besides, he hath skill to cure those that are somewhat crazed in their wits with their burdens. To him, as I said, thou mayest go and be helped presently. His house is not quite a mile from this place, and if he should not be at home himself, he hath a pretty young man to his son, whose name is Civility, that can do it. To speak on, as well as the old gentleman himself there, I say, thou mayest be eased of thy burden, and if thou art not minded to go back to thy former habitation, as indeed I would not wish thee, thou mayest send for thy wife and children to thee to this village, where there are many houses now standing empty, one of which you mayest have at reasonable rates. provision is there also cheap and good, and that which will make thy life more happy is, to be sure there thou shalt live by honest neighbors, in credit and good fashion. Now was Christian somewhat at a stand, but presently he concluded, if this be true, which this gentleman hath said, my wisest course is to take his advice. And with that he thus further spoke. Christian, sir, which is my way to this honest man's house? Worldly Wiseman, do you see yonder high hill? Christian, yes, very well. Worldly Wise, by that hill you must go, and the first house you come at is his. So Christian turned out of his way to go to Mr. Legality's house for help. But behold, when he was got now hard by the hill, it seemed so high, and also that side of it that was next the wayside did hang so much over, that Christian was afraid to venture farther, lest the hill should fall on his head. Wherefore there he stood still, and wotted not what to do. Also his burden now seemed heavier to him than while he was in his way. There came also flashes of fire out of the hill, that made Christian afraid that he should be burned. Here therefore he sweat, and did quake for fear. And now he began to be sorry that he had taken Mr. Worldly Wiseman's counsel. And with that he saw Evangelist. So here's the warrant under which Bunyan was apprehended and imprisoned for 6 months, during which he wrote Pilgrim's Progress. So there you go. It's a picture of the warrant for his arrest. The warrant for his arrest. There you go. Okay. Then you also have a picture of him with this heavy burden on his back, and also someone helping him. All right. And then there's another picture of someone helping him into a house. He's got that burden on his back, y'all, that God gave him. Letting him know that destruction was on the way. So now Evangelist comes. Now he took the advice of Mr. Worldly Wiseman, and now he's like on this hill, this huge hill that feels like he's going to fall off it. It's going to crush him. And he starts seeing fire come out of it. He thinks he's going to get burned. So he's scared to mess. And then here comes Evangelist, and he feels bad because like Evangelist didn't tell him to go this way. Evangelist said, go this way, you're going to be all right. But, he heeded the counsel of Mr. Worldly Wiseman. Now he's going to go see civility and morality, which are no saviors. Coming to meet him at the sight also of whom he began to blush for shame. So Evangelist drew nearer and nearer, and coming up to him, he looked upon him with a severe and dreadful countenance, and thus began to reason with Christian. Evangelist, what dost thou here, Christian? Said he, at which words Christian knew not what. Wherefore at present he stood speechless before him. Then said Evangelist further, art now thou the man that I found crying without the walls of the city of destruction? Yes, dear sir, I'm the man. Did not I direct thee with the way to the little wicket gate? Yes, dear sir, said Christian. How is it then that thou art so quickly turned aside? For thou art now out of the way. Christian. I met with a gentleman so soon as I had got over the slough of despond, who persuaded me that I might, in the village before me, find a man that could take off my burden. What was he? Christian, he looked like a gentleman, and talked much to me, and got me at last to yield. So I came hither. But when I beheld this hill, and how it hangs over the way, I suddenly made a stand, lest it should fall on my head. Evangelist. What said the gentleman to you? Christian. Why, he asked me whether I was going, and I told him. And what said he then? He asked me if I had a family, and I told him, but said I am too laden with the burden that is on my back, that I cannot take pleasure in them as formerly. Evangelist. And what said he then? He bid with me, he bid with hmm, he bid me with speed get rid of my burden, and I told him 'twas ease that I sought. And said I am therefore going to yonder gate to receive further direction how I may get to the place of deliverance. So he said that he would show me a better way, and short, not so attended with difficulties as the way, sir, that you set me. Which way, said he, will direct you to a gentleman's house that hath skill to take off these burdens. So I believed him, turned out of the way into this, if haply I might be soon eased of my burden. But when I came to this place and beheld things as they are, I stopped for fear, as I said, of danger, but I now know not what to do. Then said Evangelist, stand still a little, that I may show thee the words of God. So he stood trembling. Then said Evangelist, see that ye refuse not him that speaketh. For if they escape not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape, if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven. He said, moreover, now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. He also did thus apply them. Thou art the man that art running into this misery. Thou hast begun to reject the counsel of the Most High, and to draw back thy foot from the way of peace, even almost to the hazarding of thy perdition. Then Christian fell down at his foot as dead, crying, woe is me, for I am undone. At the sight of which Evangelist caught him by the right hand, saying, all manner of sin and blasphemy shall be forgiven unto men, but not faithless, but believing. Then did Christian again a little revive, and stood up trembling, as at first, before Evangelist. Then Evangelist proceeded, saying, give more earnest heed to the things that I shall tell thee of. I will now show thee who it was that deluded thee, and who it was also to whom he sent thee. The man that met thee is one worldly wise man, and rightly is he so called, partly because he favoreth only the doctrine of this world. In parentheses, therefore he always goes to the town of morality, to church, close parentheses, and partly because he loveth that doctrine best, for it saveth him best from the cross. And because he is of this carnal temper, therefore he seeketh to pervert my ways, though right. Now there are three things in this man's counsel that thou must utterly abhor. Number one, his turning thee out of the way. Number two, his laboring to render the cross odious to thee. And number three, and his setting thy feet in that way that leadeth unto the administration of death. First, thou must abhor his turning thee out of the way, yea, and thine own consenting thereto, because this is to reject the counsel of God for the sake of the counsel of a worldly wise man. The Lord says, strive to enter in at the strait gate, the gate to which I send thee, for strait is the gate that leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. From this little wicket gate, and from the way thereto, hath this wicked man turned thee, to the bringing of thee almost to destruction. Hate therefore his turning thee out of the way, and abhor thyself for hearkening to him. Secondly, thou must abhor his laboring to render the cross odious unto thee, for thou art to prefer it before the treasures of Egypt. Besides, the King of glory hath told thee that he that will save his life shall lose it. And he that comes after him and hates not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be his disciple. I say therefore, for man to labor to persuade thee that that shall be thy death, without which the truth hath said thou canst not have eternal life. This doctrine thou must abhor. Thirdly, thou must hate his setting of thy feet in the way that leadeth to ministration of death. And for this thou must consider to whom he sent thee, and also how unable that person was to deliver thee from thy burden. He to whom thou wast sent for ease, being by name legality, is the son of the bondwoman, which now is, and is in the bondage with her children, and is in a mystery, this Mount Sinai, which thou hast feared will fall on thy head. Now, if she with her children are in bondage, how canst thou expect by them to be made free? This legality, therefore, is not able to set thee free from thy burden. No man was as yet ever rid of his burden to him, no, nor ever is like to be. He cannot be justified by the works of the law, for by the deeds of the law no man living can be rid of his burden. Therefore, Mr. Worldly Wise Man is an alien, and Mr. Legality is a cheat. And for his son's civility, notwithstanding his simpering looks, he is but a hypocrite and cannot help thee. Believe me, there is nothing in all this noise that thou hast heard of these sottish men, but a design to beguile thee of thy salvation, by turning thee from the way in which I had set thee. After this, evangelist called aloud to the heavens for confirmation of what he had said. And with that there came words and fire out of the mountain under which poor Christian stood, that made the hair of his flesh stand up. The words were thus pronounced: as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them. All right, so it's cool. What he's talking about is the Ten Commandments. Boom, we got the Ten Commandments. All right, the law, heavy, it's burdensome. He got this burden on, this burden of conviction. This is Pilgrim's Progress, written in 1685 by John Bunyan. Written in 1685, Bunyan, while he's in jail in England for preaching the gospel. All right, so it says your Ten Commandments. Thou shalt have no other gods before me, number one. Number two, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images or any likeness of anything. Number three, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Number four, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. Number five, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet. So there's your Ten Commandments. They can produce a heavy burden, and they can't save you. The law can't save you. It can only point you. The law is a schoolmaster or a tutor to point us to Christ. Christ is the answer. The law shows what's wrong. The law is the mirror to the soul. It shows that we're lying, thieving, murderers, blasphemous, adulterers at heart, and that we got more secrets than we care to share with others. But God is the one who can heal. God is the one that can remove your burden, right? God is the one that can save and remove the burden. So there you go. He's talking about Mount Sinai. This is page 32 of Pilgrim's Progress, written 1685 in Bedford, England. Now, Christian looked for nothing but death and began to cry out lamentably, even cursing the time in which he met with Mr. Worldly Wiseman, still calling himself 1,000 fools for hearkening to his counsel. He also was greatly ashamed to think that this gentleman's arguments, flowing only from the flesh, should have the prevalency with him as to forsake the right way. This done, he applied himself again to Evangelist in words and sense as follows. Christian: Sir, what think you? Is there any hope? May I now go back and go up to the wicket gate? Shall I not be abandoned for this and sent back from thence ashamed? I'm sorry I've hearkened to this man's counsel, but may my sins be forgiven? Evangelist: Then said Evangelist to him, Thy sin is very great, for by it thou hast committed two evils. Thou hast forsaken the way that is good to tread in forbidden paths, yet will the man at the gate receive thee, for he has good will for men. Only said he, Take heed that thou turn not aside again, lest thou perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Then did Christian address himself to go back. And Evangelist, after he had kissed him, gave him one smile, and bid him Godspeed. So he went on with haste, neither spake he to any man by the way, nor if any asked him, would he vouchsafe them an answer? Christian just kept rolling. He's like, I ain't talking to nobody. Ain't talking to nobody. Ain't talking to nobody. He went like one that was all the while treading on forbidden ground and could by no means think himself safe, till again he was got into the way which he had left to follow Mr. Worldly Wiseman's counsel. So in process of time, Christian got up to the gate. Now over the gate there was written, Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. He knocked, therefore, more than once or twice, saying, May I now enter here? Will he within open to sorry me, though I have been an undeserving rebel? Then shall I not fail to sing his lasting praise on high. At last there came a grave person to the gate named Goodwill, who asked who was there, and whence he came, and what he would have. Christian, here is a poor burdened sinner. I come from the city of destruction, but am going to Mount Zion, that I may be delivered from the wrath to come. I would therefore, sir, since I am informed that by this gate is the way thither. Now, if you are willing to let me in. Good counsel. I am willing with all my heart, said he, and with that he opened the gate. So then Christian was stepping in, the other gave him a pull. Then said Christian, what means that? The other told him, a little distance from this gate there is erected a strong castle, of which Beelzebub is the captain. From thence both he and they that are with him shoot arrows at those that come up to this gate, if haply they may die before they can enter in. Then said Christian, I rejoice and tremble. So when he was got in, the man of the gate asked him who directed him thither. Christian, evangelist bid me come hither and knock, as I did, and he said that you, sir, would tell me what I must do. Good counsel. An open door is set before thee, and no man can shut it. Christian, now I begin to reap the benefits of my hazards. Good counsel. But how is it that you came alone? Christian, because none of my neighbors saw their danger as I saw mine. Did any of them know of your coming? Yes, my wife and children saw me at first and called after me to turn again. Also, some of my neighbors stood crying and calling after me to return, but I put my fingers in my ears and so came on my way. Good counsel. But did none of them follow you to persuade you to go back? Christian, yes, both obstinate and pliable. But when they saw that they could not prevail, obstinate went railing back, but pliable came with me a little way. Good counsel. But why did he not come through? Christian, we indeed came both together until we came at the slough of despond, into which we also suddenly fell. And then was my neighbor pliable discouraged, and would not adventure farther. Wherefore, getting out again on the side next to his own house, he told me I should possess the brave country alone for him. So he went his way, and I came mine, here after obstinate, and I to this gate. Good counsel. Then said, it's not good counsel, it's goodwill. Then said Goodwill, alas, poor man, is the celestial glory of so small esteem with him, that he counteth it not worth running the hazard of a few difficulties to obtain it. Christian, truly, said Christian, I have said the truth of pliable, and if I should also say all the truth of myself, it will appear there is no betterment betwixt him and myself. 'Tis true, he went back to his own house, but I also turned aside to go into the way of death, being persuaded thereto by the carnal argument of one Mr. Worldly Wiseman. Goodwill. Oh, did he light upon you? What? He would have had you a sought for ease at the hands of Mr. Legality. They are both of them a very cheat. But did you take his counsel? Christian, yes, as far as I durst. I went to find out Mr. Legality, until I thought that the mountain that stands by his house would have fallen upon my head, wherefore there I was forced to stop. Goodwill. That mountain has been the death of many, and will be the death of many more. 'Tis well you escaped being by it dashed into pieces. Christian, why, truly I do not know what had become of me there, had not Evangelist happily met me again as I was musing in the midst of my dumps. but 'twas God's mercy that he came to me again, and for else I had never come hither. But now I am come, such a one as I am, more fitted indeed for death by that mountain than thus to stand talking with my Lord. But oh, what a favor is this to me, that yet I'm admitted entrance here. Goodwill. We make no objections against any, notwithstanding all that they have done before they come hither. They in no wise are cast out, and therefore, good Christian, come a little way with me, and I will teach thee about the way thou must go. Look before thee, dost thou see this narrow way? That is the way thou must go. It was cast up by the patriarchs, prophets, Christ, and his apostles, and it is as straight as a rule can make it. This is the way thou must go. Christian, but said Christian, are there no turnings nor windings by whither a stranger may lose his way? Goodwill. Yes, there are many ways, but down upon this, and they are crooked and wide. But thus thou mayest distinguish the right from the wrong, the right only being straight and narrow. Then I saw in my dream that Christian asked him further if he could not help him off with his burden that was upon his back, for as yet he had not gotten rid thereof, nor could he by any means get it off without help. He told him, as to thy burden, be content to bear it, until thou comest to the place of deliverance, for there it will fall from thy back of itself. Then Christian began to gird up his loins and to address himself to his journey. So the other told him that by that he was got some distance from the gate, he would come at the house of the interpreter, at whose doors he should knock, and he would show him excellent things. Then Christian took his leave of his friend, and he began again bid him Godspeed. Then he went on till he came at the house of the interpreter, where he knocked over and over. At last one came to the door and asked who was there. Christian, sir, here is a traveler who was bid by acquaintance of the good man of this house to call here for my profit. I would therefore speak with the master of the house. So he called for the master of the house, who after a little time came to Christian and asked him what he would have. Christian, sir, said Christian, I am a man that am come from the city of destruction and going to Mount Zion, and I was told by the man that stands at the gate at the head of this, that if I called here, you would show me excellent things, such as would be and help to me on my journey. All right, I'm going to stop right there. We're a little bit at an hour, a little over an hour. So I'll stop right there. And maybe I'll try to do, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Maybe I'll do 7 p.m. 7 p.m. every evening. So 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. So it's Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan, and written in 1685 in a Bedford prison, Bedford jail in England. He was in jail for preaching the gospel. So, anyways. All right. Well, you guys have a good evening. Also, we'll be on in the morning with our Bible in a year daily reading. So that will be 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern. So hope to have you on, guys. And if you have any questions, just send me an inbox message. I'll be happy to chat with anything. If you want me to explain anything we talked about, or if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those for you. So, all right, you guys have a good night, and Lord willing, we'll see you in the morning. All right, see you later, 365. Good to have you on. Have a great night, and happy birthday, Victoria. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Victoria. Happy birthday to you. It's the best I can do. It's the best I can do. Hope you have a wonderful night, and we're willing. We'll catch you guys tomorrow. All right, there we go. All right, FBC Rosen, good to have you on. I'll be back on tomorrow at 7 a.m. and for our daily Bible reading. So have a good evening. God bless you guys. All right, my personal page. Thanks for hopping on, Sylvia. Hello, Linda. Good evening. Good to have you guys on. God bless you guys. We'll be back on 7 a.m.
All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. All right. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. This evening, 7 o'clock.